Welcome to Being Curious podcast show with Counselling Reflections, a podcast where we dive deep into the human experience, uncovering stories of resilience and triumph. We are proudly supported by Moskin, a UK-based skincare line infused with sea moss.
Oh, good evening and thank you. Well, good evening from my part of the world, and I'm up in the north of the country in the UK. And thank you, Chloe, for agreeing to be on Being Curious with Counselling Reflections. But I know you through my daughter and through my part-time daughter, but everyone else doesn't know you. Well, they might know you. So I would like you to introduce yourself and tell me or tell everyone where you're at. What's up with you?
For sure. So my name's Chloe Downs. I'm a very, very proud South Londoner. It's probably the first thing I will always mention whenever someone talks to me. I literally have South tattooed on my arm. That's how proud I am. Yeah. It's a weird one, isn't it, introducing yourself, because I always lead with my job, but actually that's such a small part of me. But to explain, I'm the founder and CEO of a talent management agency called Shift, and we manage influencers.
So I have a lot to ask, but it's interesting that you're a proud South Londoner, because I remember like Khadija, when we used to go on holiday and come back, I would be like saying to her, now I need you to speak properly, Khadija, because you know, like South London has got U's. Is it U's? There's this quirks in the South London.
We've got so many.
And I'm like, well, now we need to speak properly,
You know what's funny though? You see, when you say about speaking properly, it's funny because like my accent, my like South London accent is toned down a lot now in comparison. When I watch videos of myself when I was like at school, I sounded like the most South London road person ever. I think when I started working within the corporate world, I was very aware of the fact that like how I sounded, and kind of wanted to try to assimilate as much as possible to like the middle class white people that I was working with. So I kind of dulled down my accent a lot. And then when I started kind of working for myself, I was like, why have I done that? Because actually it doesn't make me sound stupid, because I'm not stupid. I'm a very intelligent person, and actually me speaking quote unquote properly doesn't change anything. So I've tried to kind of take it back now.
Isn't it interesting? There's me as a mother saying, okay, to my child, you need to speak properly, whatever that is. Given the fact that I often in sessions when I'm talking to clients, I actually use patois as a way of kind of, there is a certain words that you are easy explain the situation that is not in another culture or tone. Yeah, but the fact that you kind of reclaimed yourself. So what was it about your voice at the time? Just thinking about, reclaiming your voice. Why did you need to bring it back in? What was it about the corporate world that didn't suit the South London accent?
Yeah, I think so. One of my first jobs coming out of uni was I was working for an event management company that did like corporate events, but on a massive scale. So I spent barely any time in England the whole time I worked there, because we would fly in all over the place doing these huge events. And pretty much everyone who works in the company was a middle class white person. And there was a lot of microaggressions within that company where there was just like slight little comments and stuff like that. Someone said something about my attitude at one point. And I know that in that workspace, maybe in other workspaces, but in that workspace, I didn't have an attitude. And it was more so that I was being like direct, or that, they had a problem with the fact that sometimes I didn't come in and go and chit chat with everyone, because actually sometimes I just say hi to everyone and I get on with my work. But everyone within the team liked me. There was a few comments about like music sometimes, and like listening to ghetto music and all these kinds of things. And I think I suppose that I knew a lot of these things were wrong, but also I wanted to make sure that I was fitting in and that I was accepted within the company. So I found myself like dressing in a slightly different way to what I might do, if I was just going out with friends or whatever, wearing my hair in certain ways, and then toning down my accent, because I'm aware of how a South London accent sounds. To be fair, not even just South London, a working class accent sounds to middle class people, and quite often people think you're stupid because of how you speak. I think me reclaiming it was basically trying to show people that, yeah, I sound like this and I look like this, but actually also I've created an amazing company. I'm an award-winning founder, all of that kind of stuff, and I still sound like this, and it's fine.
Isn't it interesting? I'm listening to you, and I feel sad in many ways, because the thing that people are focusing on is the difference and not the contribution, not your ability to achieve the things that you wanted, and the microaggressions. I'm listening to you, and it just reminds me of lawyers that I kind of had to work with over the years, where that industry would be predominantly white or middle class, and individuals felt excluded, especially when it came to opportunities and promotion.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that space? How did you protect your own mental health during that time?
I don't think I did, really, to be honest. I don't think I did. I think I was young and in the corporate world, which is, it's just a weird world to be in generally anyway, to be honest. Like there's a lot of rule, like unspoken rules within that world. And I don't know if you know this actually, but I'm autistic. I've got Asperger's, and so, like some of these like underlying things were just so confusing to me, because in my head, you go to work, you do your work well, you know, you're nice to people and you go home. But within that workplace in particular, it was kind of like sometimes it was an issue that I wasn't trying to talk to people for long periods of time. And in my head, I'm like, surely you want me to be doing my work and not just chatting to people for the whole day. I remember I got told off once because we went to Austin, Texas for 2 weeks for an event. And I was genuinely just treated like a slave. Like they were, anything they needed, it was like I was just like the person who had to do everything for everyone, which wasn't actually my job to do. But I was just, anyone who wanted a task done, it was always pushed over to me. So I was quite stressed within those 2 weeks, and like it was impacting my mental health, my physical health within those 2 weeks. And they disciplined me because they basically said, oh, the clients love you and you're being great to the clients, but then you seem a bit down when you're around us. I was thinking, what a weird thing to say. Clearly it's the clients that are the main, like, as long as I'm not being rude to the clients, what's the problem?
So they were disciplining you because they had overloaded you with work.
Yeah.
And you did the best that you possibly could. So the feedback from the client was really positive. But they wanted to discipline you because they wanted themselves to feel better about the stress that they were causing you.
Yeah, basically they wanted me to like grin and bear it. That's what they wanted. And unfortunately, I'm just not a very fake person, so I find it hard to do that. So yeah, no, it was a very strange company, and I think I went from that company to a startup, which was nicer, and then back to a corporate company. And yeah, I think it's just there's a lot of like politics within corporate companies that just don't sit well with me. And I think going back to your question around mental health, I think I've always believed that, well, I believed back then that I just needed to work hard and that would be enough. So I think all I did was I just kept on working hard. Exactly. And thought, if I keep on working hard, then, you know, it's going to pay off. And actually, just before I started my own company, it was the realization of, no, that's unfortunately just hard work alone doesn't get you places. Because
who did you get from, so when you diagnosed with autism, and, you know, was that a relief? Because some people don't know and yet are fighting these battles, and they are a circle or a square in a circle or a square. You know, how did you know and find out? Did you know from early on, or was you fighting all this on your own?
Yeah,
and trying to make sense of it?
Yeah, so I think throughout my life, I've always felt, I'm sure this sounds so cliche, but I always felt a bit different, and I felt like a lot of people just didn't get me. And in my head, like how my brain worked, I was like, these things make so much sense, and no one else seems to understand the things that I'm understanding or I'm seeing. So I'd always kind of felt like it. However, I'm very good at adapting to situations. So I think throughout the years, I obviously just masked and like molded to the people around me without knowing that's what I was doing. It was actually during lockdown which I think a lot of people kind of figured things out about themselves generally over lockdown, because you spend so much time just kind of by yourself at home with no like external stimulation, that it kind of had made me realize things about myself. And also going back into the normal world afterwards, I found it really hard to interact with people. And I think it's because I was basically out of practice. I've been practicing like small talk and chit chat for so long that having those however many years not doing it, I'd kind of forgotten how to do it. So it was that. And then also there was a show on Netflix called Love on the Spectrum, which was about autistic people dating. And I watched it, and that's the first time ever. It actually made me quite sad, because it was the first time ever where people were like, how people were explaining things about themselves. I was like, that's exactly how I feel. I just never knew how to put it into words. So I mentioned it to my mum, and she said that she'd actually like for a couple of years had kind of thought that I might be, but didn't want to put it on me, like kind of wanted me to be able to like come to that myself. And that also, again, like from thinking about myself with it, we also kind of realized that it's pretty obvious that my dad is definitely autistic as well. And just because of similarities we have and things he's done throughout his life, that again, as a black man back in the day, no one's going to care about him. So I started looking into things. And then luckily for me, I've got the privilege of being like having the money to go and do it privately, because I know that going through the NHS is an absolute mission. But I paid, and I heard someone talking about ADHD, and I was like, oh, I think I might actually have that as well. So I got an ADHD test, and they told me, yeah, you've got ADHD. And then also within that test, they said you probably have autism as well, so you should probably get it.
It's really interesting that in terms of the journey of discovery, isn't it, about being on the spectrum or being neurodivergent. I found out I was dyslexic when I was in my 30s. But I went to uni, and my professor at the time, and I did art. So the art side was never affected, but the writing side was. And my professor said at the time, she said, Cornetta, I think you should do a PhD, but you write like an 8-year-old. And so I remember when I got the results, I cried. Because I think, one, as a woman, we tend to kind of cope and disguise it and adapt. The other, I think, in terms of what you kind of alluded to, as people of colour, we often are told that we're misbehaving in class, we're acting out. It's a behavioural issue before it is actually a neurological, biological issue.
Exactly. I think like me being... It was always a joke that I was a very blunt person, but it was like people who didn't know me was always like, oh, that Chloe's so rude. And it was not, it's just, I just say stuff. But actually, interestingly, you speaking about your dyslexia. So my brother's dyslexic, and he got diagnosed when he was like 6, 7, like he was young when he got diagnosed. And it's interesting because I read something, you might know this term. I think it's called like glass child or something like that. I can't remember. But basically it's, because there was so much focus, my mum says this as well, because there was so much focus on my brother being dyslexic, like my issues kind of didn't get focused on, especially because I was doing so well at school. Like as much as I was maybe naughty in secondary school, well, naughty, I was always getting good grades. I wasn't really causing that much trouble. So in comparison to my brother, who was struggling in school, because as much as school isn't really designed for any neurodivergent person, it's like dyslexic people are going to show up a little bit more, I think, just because of the writing and the reading aspect, like element of it. So yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if it would have been picked up earlier if my brother wasn't dyslexic. I don't know. But your point about your point about crying as well. It's I would say I'm not. It's a weird one. I always say I'm not a very emotional person, but I think it's just that I don't show emotion in a way to other people in the same way as other people. But after I did the ADHD thing, I wasn't too fussed about actually. But once I got my autism diagnosis, I remember, because I had to do it with my mum. Like with autism, you have to have like a parent basically that says how like my development when I was a baby before I would have remembered. And I went back to my flat where I live on my own, and I did it, just sat and cried. And I think I wasn't crying because I was upset that I was autistic. I was relieved that I had that answer. But I think I was really upset about, I kind of like was mourning myself. And like, I was really thinking about, I was really sad for my younger self, where I was like, if I knew this earlier on in life, like how different would my life had been. Like I'd probably have way more friends now, because I think there's a lot of friendships that I've lost over the years because of that, and relationships and all of that kind of stuff. I think I could have had better experiences and a better time at school, definitely a better time at university, because I hated uni, probably because of that. So yeah,
so there's a loss of loss, isn't there? So when you look back and you kind of think, well, had they seen me, had I had this diagnosis beforehand, I could have had a better way of coping with life, and my relationships would have been improved.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in it, isn't it? Like sometimes you go unnoticed. I only just really noticed for years, I kind of played with the idea that my daughter Khadijah might be on the spectrum. But I have noticed it more so when I've seen her and I come to the realization that ADHD is part of me. And then I did a course recently and I absolutely recognize the things that I have was also in my child and also on the other side of the family. So I think sometimes it must be really difficult when you have traits of excellence in other parts of your life, but you're working really hard to make it happen.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the thing is, it's weird because I've gone back and forth with it. I don't know if you'll feel the same, but I've gone back and forth with it because I'm like, yeah, if I found out earlier, parts of my life would have been better. However, if I had found out earlier and I'd like known throughout school, would I have been treated differently? Like, would I have been like, people would have kind of allowed me to get on with things sometimes, or like let me off on things, which I actually don't think would have been beneficial to me. And actually, because I didn't know, and whether this is a positive or negative, I don't know, but because I didn't know, I'm very high functioning. So like I'm really good at I'm good at like fitting into spaces because I've had to learn how to. And I don't know if I would have had that same learning my whole life.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I wonder, when you think of one of the most successful peoples in the world who are on the spectrum, so I think of Richard Branson?
Richard Branson. Unfortunately, Elon Musk, but we don't.
Oh, really? Well, yes.
Yeah, he's autistic.
However, he's got an amazing brain. Okay, well, okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole. But I wonder, is it because of certain aspects of limitations or your superpower that you was able to be successful? And then what does success mean? So when you started you went out and you started your shift, and why did you start it? I suppose that's the story literally. What drove you to start it?
So funnily enough, I started it because I wanted to create a company I would have been happy to work for. I've had loads of jobs. Like I've had loads and loads of jobs. I've been working since I was 16 and literally have not ever had a break in employment since I was 16, and I'm now 30. And I think I'd never been happy in any job, probably because of my neurodiversity and like my difference in different jobs. But I wanted to create a company where people would be happy to work for my company. I wanted to create a company that wasn't just focused on like numbers and money and profits, and actually focus on people. And actually by doing that, we've been really profitable because I've got 100% staff retention. So no one's ever left my company. And it's nearly 4 years old because, and that in itself is really expensive. Like it's so expensive to hire people and, onboard people and retrain people. It's not. So that's been great. In terms of the talent that we represent, again, we've retained so many of our talent because we actually care about them as individuals rather than how much money they're making us. So that's honestly, that was the motivation. That
is really interesting, isn't it? Because 70% of our mental health is from work. The fact that you've been able to retain 100% of your staff, they haven't left you or said, I'm not going on this journey with you, and that you're able to keep the talent that you support. So how did that happen? Because I don't know any companies that do that, because most of the people that I talk to are talking to me about how difficult the workplace is. So why did you get it and that the rest of the world hasn't got it?
It's so easy and obvious. I just don't understand how people don't see it. Like you just treat people well. Like it's such a simple thing. You literally just treat people well. I think I'm a good business person as well. I think going back to your thing about like the superpowers that you have with neurodiversity, I think sometimes I don't know what the difference is between my ADHD and my autism. So I'll just say neurodiversity as a whole, because I don't know which one's which sometimes. But I'm able to, this sounds silly, but like I'm able to see into the future, because like I'm so aware of the cause and effect of things that I know that if I do this, then that will probably happen, and then that thing will probably happen, and then this person might do this thing, and then that is going to be the end result.
So you actually think that way. So you actually have, is it like a map that you're able to, are you able to visualize in your eyes, or does it pop out into kind of a space of, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. I don't think I have, I don't think it's a visualization of it. I think I just think of things, because I think about things quite logically. It's kind of like a maths equation, basically. So a good example is that, like there was a creator that we wanted to sign, and there was things that we had to do basically to create a situation where they would sign with us. It was all honest situation. There was no lies involved, but we had to create a situation. And there was about 5 steps before we could sign him. And I knew exactly what was going to happen at every single step. And then he signed at the end. And I remember saying it to one of my team and saying, look, this is what we're going to do. And this is what's going to happen. And I remember the end of it, he came to me and was like, Chloe, you're like, you can see into the future. How did you know that this was going to play out in that way? But it's just, I think it's probably because my autism, like, because I've had to be so, like, again, without knowing, I've had to be so aware of people's behaviors, because I don't understand people's behaviors. So I've had to kind of analyze them and kind of make like loads of notes in my head about, okay, cool, if this person acts like this, then they're probably annoyed with me. If this person acts like this, then they're probably, like they're probably sad. So that means I should probably go and comfort them. Because I have all of these different like equations basically of human behavior in my head, I can kind of use that knowledge and those experiences to predict what will happen in the future of
experiences. It's so interesting, because I'm listening to you, and I think when it comes to like neurodivergent, I think it is a roadmap. I think I used to get told off for being a maverick, because I think when I'm listening to you, I also see my younger self in the workplace that used to get told off quite a bit because of the way that I thought about things. I could see things. I remember doing it was a presentation for funding, and I got told to take out some information around mental health. But I just knew in my heart that this was the right way of dealing with the future clients. And as a result, I remember going to this meeting. There was like 20 senior execs, and my head of service told me off right in front of them. He said, I told you to take this bit of information out. And I said, no, because I really believed in that the way forward, and it was to do with employment and mental health, was to focus on mental health. But I was about 2 or 3 years ahead of the curve. And then later on, the whole organization started to work in the mental health area and think about mental health. But it can be quite lonely, because you can be a maverick. Was you not lonely when you first was thinking in the way that you was thinking? Or did you not know that that's how you was thinking?
I think this sounds like a really sad statement, but I think I've always just been lonely. I don't think I can think of a time where I haven't been. Obviously I've got good friends, but even the way in which I interact with my friends is very different to how my friends will interact with each other and other people will interact with people. I think because of how not everyone, it's hard for me to explain sometimes how my brain works to other people or what my thought process is. So it just makes more sense to just kind of keep it to myself, and then or try to present a simplified version of it. But also sometimes my simplified version is also too much for people. So I think it definitely is. That's not something that I've managed to fix yet.
You feel tired. Yeah. You feel tired of work. Because I can imagine if you're having to kind of break down these pathways or these segues into things and think about things in a particular way, I can imagine that's using a lot of brain power.
Yeah.
To get through the day, to get through the week, to get through the month, to get through the year.
Yeah, I'm knackered. I think it's funny. When I was getting my diagnosis, when I was speaking to the doctor around autism, he asked me that same question. He said, "You're tired a lot, right?" And I said, "I'm tired all the time, and like both physically and mentally. Like sometimes my brain is just done." And he said, "That's why, because you've for so long, and I'm just in the habit of doing it for so long. Like you basically had to like put on a whole a mask every single day without even realizing you were doing it." To be able to function within the world. And I think I get this quite a lot. If I've had a week where I've had to go to like a lot of like work events, which means I have to do a lot of networking, which I hate so much, and small talk is the most boring thing I could possibly think of, where I have to do it. If I've got a week of doing that, I actually just have to switch off. So I won't speak to anyone for like a few days, and I just have to be by myself to basically recharge, because it's so much. Like there's so many things that I do that come naturally to people that just is exerting so much energy for me.
No, I absolutely agree. So I think there are some people who absolutely get benefits from being in a crowd, and then they get energized and they can. But there are some people that can only dip in for a moment or two and then come back out. That actually is too much. And I really recognize those kind of qualities. How did you then understand that, that actually I need to look after myself? And then what does self-care look like for you? If you're having to kind of, you've got to go to these events, they're front-facing, they're a lot of chit-chat that you don't particularly enjoy. How do you look after yourself then to keep your brain going?
Yeah, I don't think I have, to be honest. Like, I don't think I really found that. I've tried my best. It's weird because I think unfortunately, my self-care is just me being on my own in my flat and doing nothing, basically, and just like not engaging with people. However, I don't think I even really particularly do that well, because I always need to have something going on. So quite often I'll literally be watching something on my iPad, and I will walk around the flat with it. So if I'm tidying up, I'll have it in my bedroom, I'll tidy up, I'll move it to the kitchen. It's kind of like I always have something going on.
But in some ways, that from a kind of neurological point of view, that kind of eating away your dopamine. So then when you've eaten all your energy, do you do a big crash and then you're on your own? Or do you kind of go away on holiday? Or do you still take the iPad and have noise and stimuli kind of around you?
I generally have something going on, I think, but you're right. I think sometimes like it's definitely not helpful, because actually sometimes then I go in like freeze mode, where I'm doing the absolute bare minimum I can to stay alive, basically, where I'm just like, I'll eat I won't bother to make a nice meal or like do anything. I'll just eat what I need to eat to fill my belly, and then I'll sleep when I need to sleep, and maybe shower. And sometimes I'll just have like everything kind of shuts down. I think with holidays, the issue with having your own company is that a holiday is never truly a holiday, because as much as I have a team that can definitely get on with stuff while I'm off, my brain's still on, and I'm still thinking, okay, cool, what's going on? Or like, oh, this thing has to happen today, hopefully the team have done it. Or like, I might just check if the team have done it, or let me just quickly look at my emails and see if this person sent blah blah blah.
And then does it pull you back into work then? So are you in a nice place, but you're only half there?
Yeah, I find it quite hard to switch off. And I think, and then also it's the kind of dread of the fact I know how much work I have to go back to. So I don't even really like taking too much time off, because the longer I'm off, the more I have to come back to. Like last year, I think I took like 5 days off, I think, to go to France. And whenever I go to France, because my granddad has a place in France, so when I go there, that's a good place for me to properly switch off, and I just read, basically. I actually don't really watch anything while I'm there. And then I did like a long weekend in New York, but again, that was only like it was with Deja and Delilah, and it was only like 2 days either side that I was actually not working, I think. So yeah, I didn't really take time off, and I think, yeah, it's unfortunately now I'm having to make decisions where it's like I have to just
get the balance.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that like I suppose you need to tell me a bit more about this, because I'm not really okay on the technical terms of modern life. But your company and your business and the things that you think about is almost dopamine chasing, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
And so I can imagine if you chosen to be like in South France growing grapes, I can imagine that would be a really lovely, gentle life, and I would join you. But with the industry that you are in, isn't like that. So how do you balance out that kind of the need to not only manage your business, develop, scale up, or whatever it is that you have to do, with an industry that is on 24/7 all the time?
It's such a weird industry because like one, I have to be on social media for my job, which like constantly being on social media just isn't a good thing for anyone anyway. And I think sometimes I try to make out like, oh, it's my job, so I have to be on it all the time. But actually, I think it's just I started being on it all the time because it's my job, and now I'm on it all the time, but I'm not even doing anything to do with my job, and it's, you know, it's kind of rolled into that. So one, I have to be on social media all the time. There's also like such kind of negativity in comparison in my industry. Everyone's always comparing themselves to other people. Oh, this person's got more followers than me. This person's got a better brand deal than me. Oh, this person's working with the brand that I wanted to work with. And then there's also comparison that's kind of put onto us as business owners, because it's like, oh, this agency has better talent than you, or this person left you and they went to this person. So, and it's funny because I don't think I've ever really been someone who has compared myself to people particularly, but I'm kind of now in a situation where it's kind of just being put on me to do that.
Wow, do you know what? It's really good to talk, and it's really gets me curious because I would never have known that. For me, who's just kind of got my little podcast, I'm almost like a little fish in the great ocean. I never thought, I'm just thinking, I'm just going to do something that I like. Whereas actually on a big scale, on a grown-up scale, that actually is highly competitive in some ways. And even if you're not like that, are you drawn into starting to think that way? Do you have to be that because your competitors are like that?
You know what? You don't even really have to be it, but you kind of get sucked into it, because if people are constantly putting comparisons onto you, you kind of, it's difficult to not do that to yourself. And I think again, it's probably me as well, because I think I've grown up always feeling like I have to prove myself to people. And I want people to understand me and want people to understand like what I'm doing and where I'm coming from. So quite often I think I get into that space because I'm conscious of how other people are thinking of me and conscious that people might think the wrong thing of me. And actually that's something that I need to work on personally and stop doing that. And I'm aware I do it. And I think I've got a lot better at not doing it over the past couple of years. But
this is like external gratification or external kind of sense of wanting. Is it about wanting people's approval or just wanting to be noticed? Or if you're the youngest child and there's a lot going on, do you need to be seen in your family? Is that the way you got seen?
No, not really. Like I don't. It's funny. I don't particularly like attention, but.
Do you see?
Yeah, no, I seem to always get it, but it's not particularly. It's less of like being seen and attention. I think. Do you know what it is? I think when I was in secondary school, I was one of the top achievers in my year. So I was getting like the best grades, and I was in all of the gifted and talented programs, and I was doing dance, like training to be a professional dancer outside of school. I was doing so many things, but it's because of how I act, and because I don't really didn't really care about achieving all of those things, and I wasn't really trying that hard, which wasn't a good thing, but I was just kind of naturally getting these A's and all of that kind of stuff. And I was naughty, and I was one of the more popular kids. All of the teachers would assume I was stupid. So I remember one time I came into my maths class, and my new maths class, and I was at the top set. I think it was like a new year, and I walked in and I was in the top set, and I remember the teacher saying, "Oh, are you meant to be in this class?" Like, what? Why have you just randomly decided that I shouldn't be in this class just from looking at me and just because of how I carry myself or whatever? You decided I shouldn't be in this class. And then again, I remember I took my maths GCSE early, and my teacher was like giving out the results, and he handed it to me and he wouldn't like let go. So I was like trying to grab it off him, and he said, I had to check this 3 times to make sure it was yours. And I got really worried because I was like, oh no, I must have failed. Like I've ruined it. I opened it and I had an A, and he was so shocked that I got an A, but just because of how I acted in school, because I wasn't a nerd basically. And I think because of that, And because of a lot of other things with like in a similar breath, I've always felt like I get really annoyed when people don't know that I'm smart or that don't know that I'm good at stuff.
It makes sense if the messaging society gives you, whether it's through your teachers or for externally for others, that either you have to sound a certain way or you have to behave a certain way, so that, you know, you can be seen. I remember one of the smartest kids at Khadijah's school. No, I won't say what. I won't tell you the name by schooling. But he was super smart. But in the end, he ended up being in trouble because actually, instead of the school saying, I need to accelerate you, move you up a year, challenge you, stretch you, you know, it left a child who was really frustrated. And what do? You act out when you're not being challenged. But then to have a teacher then to turn around, I'm going to challenge you. I don't believe this paper is yours. That just shows, I can't even imagine what that must. I'm annoyed on your behalf. I'm going to go back to school with you tonight.
To me, I always think I'd love to go back into school now and be like, look at me now. But yeah, no, it's even actually like something that was said to me throughout school as well was like, Chloe, you're going to have to work for yourself. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, Chloe, you're great, you should have your own business. It was because they were like, you don't listen to anyone, so you're going to have to work for yourself. And actually going off your point of the guy from DJ school, like I think I definitely acted out because I wasn't challenged. And also I think this is an autism thing, but like I've got a very strong sense of justice. And I want the right information to be put out there. So what happened a lot was that if I thought a teacher was wrong, I would challenge them. And also I don't really see hierarchy. I don't see people as above or below me. Unless you've really proved that you're above or below me, I don't see it just because you are a teacher or whatever it is. So I would challenge teachers quite a lot. And looking back now, I probably was a little bit smarter than some of my teachers, but probably not all of them. But probably was. Now I look back, but no, I think. And the thing is, I also understand like how difficult I must have been to teach as a kid, because you don't expect a kid to be challenging you and asking you questions. And it wasn't even that I was really speaking back or being rude. It was just that I was asking them questions, and teachers don't like that, which I disagree with. I think that actually we should be teaching kids to challenge things if they don't think it's right.
It's really interesting. I'm smiling at you because I was that child too. But I was always asking why. I remember asking my grandmother about contraception and, you know, what did you use for contraception? And I can imagine her saying, Panita, I don't understand why you're asking me about contraception. I can see your eyes rolling back. But I think that's the part of you being curious, isn't it? That you can't just take someone's word. You have to understand why they're doing or behaving or saying the things that they're saying.
Exactly. And it's definitely, it's a difficult thing, because I think, I randomly saw a TikTok video about this last week from a girl who's got autism, and she was talking about constantly asking questions of people. And I've noticed that in myself, that sometimes I'm asking questions and I can see the person getting annoyed at me, or I can see they start kind of becoming defensive because they think that I'm challenging them. And it's not that I'm challenging, it's that I need to make sure that I have all of the facts I can possibly have before making any decision or making like changing my opinion or creating an opinion. Because I want to make sure, I don't think I'm always right, but I want to ensure that I'm always correct. So I try my best to just understand. And I think that's where a lot of teachers were annoyed with me, where I was asking them questions because they weren't explaining themselves properly, or they weren't, you know, outlining things properly. And actually what they thought I was doing was
undermining them. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm just listening to you, and the idea of asking questions. I kind of look at COVID time, and it was a really depressing time, and really lots of people struggled with their mental health. But I also think it gave people the opportunity to ask questions, slow down, and see and hear and look at things in a way that I don't think we ever did before. And so I wonder, like, in terms of your business as well, actually you asking questions, is that the driving force? The fact that you ask these questions and challenge not only yourself but others, does that make it easier to kind of grow a business because you ask the questions that people don't ask?
Yeah, I suppose so. I hadn't thought about it like that, but you're probably right. I think probably the reason, like, we got very successful very quickly, and I think it's because I was noticing the gaps in the industry, or like what people weren't doing or what people were doing, and again, just trying to fill those areas, or learn from other people's mistakes or things they were doing correctly. So yeah, probably I feel like the questioning of like everything probably does help. I also, like, I question my team to try to make sure that I'm doing better. I question them to make sure they're doing better. Do you know what I mean? Like, I make sure people are always clear on what they're doing. I also think it's probably made me quite a good like boss and leader, because I don't just allow people to, like, if people have made mistakes, rather than saying, no, you don't do that, you do this, I say, you don't do that, but why do you think it would make more sense to do this, or what do you think would be the correct way to do it? So they actually understand why they're doing things, rather than just doing things because I've paid them.
It feels like then you're a coach to your team and to the people around you, that actually you lead from examples in terms of being curious, but you also want them to think about their own actions and behaviors as to why they did the things that they do. Can you do it? If the organization grows and just dominates the whole world, I don't know how big you are, as it gets bigger, there's more moving parts. Can you still do that? Or is there a certain optimum size that you can control to be able to do that and have the relationship in the way that you have? Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. I'm not sure. It's funny because even when starting the business, I never wanted it to become some like huge organization, because I think actually a lot of the strength we have is because we're like a small boutique agency who has individual relationships with the people we work with. It can scale because it is scaling, and I don't work day to day with every single like talent that we manage. But I still have those relationships, and I still ensure that we have kind of moments throughout the year where everyone comes together and everyone interacts with each other. I think it probably could be scaled. I think it's more around the training of people, because sooner or later, I suppose I'm training the people who are training the people, right? Like, I'm not, if I'm a CEO and there's 100 people that work for me, I probably can't individually train every single intern that comes through. So I suppose it's more so around creating a shared ethos, which I think I have done with Shift. I think like all of us collectively have like a shared set of beliefs around the industry, but also I've tried to ensure that I've allowed for space for everyone to have their own thoughts and feelings about things. Like, you don't have to think exactly like me. We just have to have a shared vision, I suppose, for like where we're trying to get to. So I could see now with the junior members of my team, I could see if someone was to come. Actually, no, we have this example. So my nephew, well, my cousin's child, but I call him my nephew, who's 10. He's homeschooled. So I said to my cousin, I'll take him in to work with me to like have a work experience day, basically. So I brought him in, which was quite cool, because he kept on saying, Chloe, how old do I have to be to come and work for you? I was like, you're way off, mate, but it's all right. But yeah, he came in, and I was actually quite busy that day. So I'd said to the team, like, do you guys mind like helping out and just giving him a little task and stuff? And everyone was down. And one of my junior team members, actually the most, well, he's not most junior, but like the newest person within the team, she like took him for the day basically and gave him a bunch of tasks. And I was watching her teaching him, and I thought, oh yeah, like you get it, like you're teaching him in the same way that I would teach him, and you're telling him the stuff about the company that I would tell him about the company. And yeah, I think so. That was quite a nice example of like, if everyone has a collective shared ethos, then it should hopefully just trickle down, even if it's not coming direct from the source anymore.
It's really interesting. I'm listening to you, and I think it's really a beautiful example of just using a collective idea to kind of have a shared message, to invite people to be part of that message, and then to see that it actually is working when your other, a colleague of yours or a junior of yours is teaching your nephew the skills in the way that you would teach them. So you can then see, well, actually, it's working. So I really don't understand the world. I find it really interesting, why I don't understand the world. Why would you not use diversity and inclusion? And I know that things are shifting again in terms of the sands, but why would you not use all the people, whether it's women, transgender, whether it is male, whether it's Chinese or black? Why wouldn't you use all the talent? Why would you not use all the skills, whether they were neurotypical or neurodivergent, to kind of bring a company along? Because that, to me, in my head, that makes sense, that you then actually influence more people.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, I think, like, and to be honest, again, I think this is why we've been successful, because we all as a team, we all collectively truly care about changing the industry. And I've always even said to the team I've hired, I don't mind if you stay with shifts forever or not. Like, if there's another job that's better for you, then go for it. Like, what would make me more proud is people really would love to hire people that have worked at shift. Like, I want people to look at people's CV, see that they worked at shift, and say, yeah, that's an agency that I want to work for. And also just like take the ethos that we have and spread it out. Exactly. Because I think it's not just us. Like, there's other people in the industry that are pushing for change, but I think the change in this industry is only coming from people who are really doing business because they care, rather than because they want to make money.
Ethical practice is about kind of really caring and wanting to look after not only the staff but also the clients. Can I ask you then? So I'm feeling very naive and out of my depth. What is going on in the industry then? Why did when you came along and you noticed there was a gap in the market or a philosophy that really needed to take place? What was going on in the industry then?
Just capitalism, basically. Just people, the classic capitalism. I think it's. Do you know what's interesting? I think, and I've seen this generally with my peers that own agencies or work within agencies. That I think when you come from a working class background and you understand what it is to work to get to where you are and not kind of be handed things, and you've known how much time you've put into getting to wherever you're getting to, you kind of care a bit more about the people that are behind you, and you want to bring them forward, or people that are from a similar background or whatever. I feel like you just care a bit more. Whereas I think sometimes when you've come, and this isn't for everyone, of course, but I think sometimes when you've come from a place where, I'm sure you've worked hard, but you've jumped steps and you've got to places without really doing as much as others. And that there's not really a threat. Like, if you lose this job, you'll get another job, or your parents will give you some money or whatever. I feel like your motivations are different, and sometimes your motivations are just purely around building the system that you profited from. Whereas we didn't profit from that system, so I don't really care about giving back to that system. I don't care about putting more money into everything. I want to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and everyone is getting paid fairly, because in my opinion, if everyone gets paid fairly, then things can only get better. Whereas other people are very focused on, we need to carry on. I've got money, I want more money and more money and more money. Rather than actually, if we just shared this out, then everyone would be doing okay.
It's really interesting, because I think what's wonderful at this moment in time is that there are more and more women business owners and entrepreneurs and CEOs. So they're starting up and they're doing things. So I think the workplace is shifting.
Yeah.
I think there's also, in terms of disposable wealth, there's more and more women right across the world doing this. At the same time, there's women's rights that are being reduced in parts of the world.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something about being a woman, seeing it being, women tend to work more relationally. Is that the difference between maybe a kind of masculine idea, male idea of wealth and wealth generation? Because men tend to be, not exclusively, and I'm mindful that I'm generalizing here, that actually they tend to be kind of competitive. I want to get to the top. And maybe the top in their industry is getting loads of money. Whereas I don't know if women actually kind of think that way. They will bring everyone along with them.
Yeah.
If you get that idea.
Well, I suppose if you think about kind of the like the nature of it, and like how, like, if we think about like on back in caveman times, whatever, what we would have done, like women are like, we have to think about everyone, right? Like you have to make sure that everyone's fed and your family is fed, and think about that. Whereas men probably were going off and hunting and individually bringing that one thing back. So I don't know, I suppose that works. But I was actually speaking to my friend today who owns an agency, and we were having a conversation just about like kind of the work we do. And she made a really good point of the fact that I can't remember what word she used. It was a good word, but I can't remember it. But she just spoke about like all the things as like female owners, like female founders and like female CEOs and all that kind of stuff. All of these like things that we do that goes unnoticed. So I think when I think about a lot of my male counterparts, I've been single for the same amount of time I've been in this industry. And to be honest, it's probably because I haven't really had any time to like talk to anyone. And even when I do have time, I don't want to, because I'm so tired that I'd rather just go home and be by myself. Whereas like my male counterparts don't have to think about that, because they have more like brain capacity to have those relationships. She was also talking about like trying to have a baby and having to think about that while also thinking about how am I going to navigate having a kid?
Yeah.
And it's also managing my business. No man would ever have to think about that, because realistically it would be his partner that would be dealing with that.
It's really interesting. So there's some of the research is coming out saying that there's more women that are likely to be on their own, or women are choosing to not have children, so making a choice around whether or not they become parents. And in some ways, maybe this is the messaging we got given. Maybe you got given that actually you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to be able to kind of be successful and entrepreneurial, and then maybe have a partner that chooses to be at home as a hand and allow you to just be the person that you want to be? So is this about a shift in gender roles, or are we still stuck in very traditional ideas about what it means to be a woman owner, CEO, but we also expect you to have kids and step down or do the housework all at the same time?
Yeah. I think people think that, I think a lot of men think that you can do everything because they haven't had to experience trying to do everything, if that makes sense. So I've had these conversations with, again, like men that are kind of in similar spaces to me, who they think they're juggling everything, but they're not. And even going back to what you were saying about the kind of emotional element of it within my company, like I have to do like the one-to-ones with the team. Sometimes they're telling me about really personal things and getting emotional, which is actually quite difficult for me, because I'm not. I find those kinds of interactions quite difficult. But I've had to kind of just like try my best and like learn to do it. Whereas I think when I've had male bosses, I've never really gone to them and started like crying about a personal issue, probably because I wouldn't think that was an appropriate thing to do in front of a male like boss. Whether that's a good thing to think about or not, but that's probably what I would have thought. Whereas with a female boss, I might feel more comfortable to do that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm mindful that we're saying about gender, but I think there's something about not necessarily nurture nature, but something maybe societal, a way showing up in life that's been assigned to female genders, male genders. Because I think there are men who are dying to be much more expressive and are much more nurturing. When I look at my partner, I think he's much more nurturing than I am. I think now that I'm more accepting of being neurodivergent, I'm really good at showing up for clients. Really less so. I probably need to do some work at home in myself. I wonder then for you and, female entrepreneurs and business owners, is it about resourcing the energy? It's not about that you're not able to do it, but I wonder if it's about, because you're having to do so many other things, do you have the mental capacity to hold all the stories? Yeah, I suppose your clients, your employees, the interns, then it's your life, your values, your families around you, your friendships. I wonder if you have the capacity to always hold this stuff
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to juggle it, and I think you're always gonna. Well, I felt like I was always letting at least like one side of my life down. Whether that's like I wasn't spending enough time with family because like I was always working, or I wasn't really able to show up for my friends because I just didn't really have the like brain capacity to do so, or even like it just didn't even cross my mind to drop someone a message because I've been on my phone all day and now I'm home. I just want to throw it across the room and not talk to anyone. So yeah, it's definitely difficult to juggle everything. And yeah, I think, but to be fair, probably not even just women. I think the intersectionality of it, like there's a lot of different communities that are gonna have a lot more. Like, for example, like I don't live at home. Do you know what I mean? If you're someone who lives with your parents and your grandparents, then you probably have a lot more to deal with than I do. Or if like a parent is sick or you're a carer, then again, you're gonna have a lot more to deal with than I do personally. Like, but I can, if I really wanted to, I could just be selfish. There's not actually anyone who depends on me to you know, live day to day.
At the same time, people live longer and healthier. When you look at parts of the world where they still live with their families, there's a lot of support. I spoke to this wonderful lady who was a coach, a mindfulness coach, and she was based in the Far East a couple of weeks ago, and she just talked about growing up. She was Indian and talked about growing up with an extended family and the joy that just having so many people around that she could lean into. So when her parents told her off, she had someone to go to. Because I wonder, when you're having to do all this on your own and then just thinking about it, coming home, in some ways it might be a safety blanket, but sometimes it might be nice to kind of lean into someone as well.
Yeah, no, you're right, because actually even just like the bare minimum of it, where I come home and I have to cook myself dinner, like no one's cooking me dinner, or even coming home and it's freezing cold because I haven't turned the heating on yet. Like there's so many things where you're doing everything on your own. I realized that the whole of last week I didn't go into my living room once because I was literally getting up, going from my bedroom to the kitchen to make myself breakfast, go to the bathroom to get showered, go back to my bedroom to get ready and leave the house. And then I was coming back and doing the same thing. And I actually just didn't step into my living room and like just take time to...
So I'm mindful. I'm sitting here and I'm mindful that actually this feels like doom and gloom. But in Melbourne, you know, but how do you invite yourself to just take a break? You know, I would want to invite yourself to kind of take a break and find gaps of joy. Where would your gaps of joy be? How do you kind of make sure that you had time and space?
Yeah, you're right. I feel like it sounded like I'm feeling very sorry for myself this whole conversation, but I feel like I'm overall a generally quite content person. I think I've always tried to strive for contentment rather than happiness. So I think happiness is fleeting and contentment can be a constant. But I think I do try to be happy as well, but I think to constantly aim for happiness is to potentially be disappointed, because no one can be happy all the time. And actually, I think it's probably a negative thing to be happy all the time. You need to express other emotions. But anyway, I think I have good friends around me, and I'm grateful for that. I think I've got friends that understand me, and that was difficult. That's difficult for me to find sometimes. But I've got friends who get me, who don't get annoyed with me if they don't hear from me for like a couple of weeks because they know I'm just getting on with things, or can come around to my house and just sit there quietly because I don't really want to talk. And it's not because I'm angry. I just sometimes like sitting in silence. So I've got good friends around me. I think I've got a strong family network. As I say, like I've got my cousin who's got her kids, who I'm very close to her kids, and I try my best to like spend time with them as much as possible. One of her daughters is literally mini me. Like my cousin calls her Chloe all the time because we're like literally the same person. And I think even like me being around to help her to navigate things, because I think her brain is similar to mine. Like I realized I've got some, I don't know if you've seen them, but like loop headphones, loop earplugs, which basically they're good for like blocking out kind of, you can still hear people, but like kind of helps with like, what's the word? Like sound sensitivity and stuff. And I was out with her the other day, my niece, and I could see that she was getting frustrated with like the sounds of like the bus I think we were on. So I went and bought her loop like earplugs, and like I recognized that in her because I have the same issues, and that made me happy just being able to be that person for her, because I didn't really have anyone like that when I was a kid to notice that certain things were impacting me. So no, I think I've got good people around me. I'm also proud of everything I've done. Like I think I've worked very hard, and I'm happy that I've done well, not just for myself, but to be able to show other people that they can also do well. Because again, I think growing up, I don't really remember seeing anyone who looked like me or looked like my peers that was kind of doing anything, especially in South London anyway. Like I didn't really see anyone that was doing anything that seemed attainable to me.
It's really lovely to hear you kind of talk about, like, guess the challenges of kind of having autism and ADHD and the growth and the desire to make a difference. What's really wonderful is that actually giving space not only to your team, but also recognizing that actually you've got family members that might have simple traits. And I wonder I know you're really young in your life, so I wonder if you had to project forward, to your 50s, you get to my kind of age group, what would you want to do next in your journey? How would you want to kind of show up in your life? Because you've done so much extraordinary things now, so I can't even imagine what it's going to look like in 10 or 15 weeks.
I've had a lot of lives. All my friends always joke about how many lives I've lived. But yeah, I think whenever I think about like what my dream life is, if I didn't have to think about like how I paid my bills or anything like that, my dream life would honestly be just like going and living in like, I don't know, somewhere hot, but like just literally just living on like a farm somewhere and just eating my farm food. But I think what my mum pointed out something to me recently, and actually even it goes back to like earlier on in our conversation, that my motivations throughout my life have always been helping people. And even in building a talent agency, my motivation wasn't because, oh my God, I love influencers and I watch YouTube. I wasn't that person. Though I actually didn't really follow influencers before I got into this industry. Before I was like working for other companies within this industry. But the motivation was because I wanted to like help. And I think that's something I need to focus on more. And even when I think about what brings me joy within this job anyway, is very much like I really enjoyed training my team and like helping them and bringing them up and like seeing them kind of be able to do stuff on their own. I really enjoy I go to like do a lot of talks at schools and like talk to the kids about like jobs and business and all of that kind of stuff. Like that's the kind of stuff I enjoy. So I think when I look into the future and like what I want to do and like what I think would bring me the most joy is something, I don't know what it is, but like something that's specifically just helping people. I've never been someone who's been particularly motivated by money, like my whole life. Like, when people were kids and they're like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I don't think I ever actually said that. So I don't care. I think as long as I've got enough money just to like, enjoy my life, go on a couple of nice holidays every so often, whatever. But I think unfortunately the space that I've been in and the very quick kind of, what's the word? Like my quick journey to success, like I got success, like successful in whatever like externally people think I'm successful, and I'm on the Forbes under 30 list, and there's all these things that look really cool, but like, do any of those things make me particularly happy? Not really. Like I think it's more so they're helping people, and I think what I would quite like to do is just like strip back all those things that people externally think is making me successful and just do stuff that's helping, basically. So yeah.
I'm listening to you and I just think you're just a beautiful spirit, because I think you were able to spot something at a time that no one else could see. You were able to not only create a safe space for yourself, but for others. And that actually you're patient enough to kind of anticipate what your potential clients might need as well. And then there's something about, in terms of growth, that actually it's the simple things in life that matter. But as long as you're feeling really kind of resourced and settled, that actually you're probably at your most happiest.
Yeah.
So thank you for agreeing to be on Being Curious with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
I enjoyed the conversation. So where can people find you, or what do people do in these moments of, because clearly, people want to be influenced by you in some way, where can they find you? And
No, it's funny. I work in social media, but I just share rubbish, to be honest. I don't feel like I share anything that's particularly helpful. But my Instagram is FRKLE, freckle, because people won't be able to see, but I do have freckles. Yeah, FRKLE on Instagram. And then sometimes I talk about work stuff on LinkedIn, which is just Chloe Downs. I think I'm actually LinkedIn/Chloe Downs. I don't think I'm even Chloe Downs like 22-3 or something. So I think I'm the original Chloe Downs on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
thank you, Chloe, for agreeing to have a conversation with me. I really appreciate that you took your Friday evening to spend some time with me. I just found it really interesting, and I really value your insight into your world and the things that you think about and what you've had to navigate. And I think, especially as a person of color, I think you're not really necessarily talking about that, but as a person of color, navigating spaces that actually may be exclusively another group and making it your own, but also having the bravery to step out and decide to back you. That is an amazing thing to kind of say, you know what, I've got a good enough skill set so I can back myself.
Yeah. No, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was nice to talk about stuff that I don't really talk about as well. I usually just talk about like all work stuff and yeah, like and our success and all of that kind of stuff. And actually, I don't really care about all of that. So no, it was nice to have a conversation just about other things basically.
Thank you.